Welcome back. It's been a while since we've done a lesson, so glad to see you come back like you had a choice. Today we're going to learn about how to use divisibility rules. So rules that are going to help math be a little easier for you. Some patterns. Get this goal written down along with today's date and page number. And just so you know, it's going to be notes heavy today. Notes heavy. Here's your warm up. So I want you to write each number as a product of two whole numbers in as many ways as possible. So for example, 20, I know that 1 times 20 will give me 20. Can you think of any other way that that works? Same with 48. 1 times 48 works. See if you can come up with more than that. We'll see you at the end. All right, so here are all the different ways I found. Of course, I kind of cheated a little bit. As you can see, I took the factors and I flip-flopped them to make it look like I had more. But actually, this is all you really have for 20. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, they all give you 20. And then I made it look even bigger here, but if I get rid of this and I get rid of this, this is basically all the different ways that you can write. I guess I could have kept it there. You could write 48. So hopefully you're able to come up with all those. Now that your brain is all warmed up, it's time for us to get into all those notes I promised you about. All right, so let's think about this. It says this year 42 girls signed up to play soccer for the Junior Girls League, which has 6 teams. To find whether each team can have the same number of girls, decide if 42 is divisible by 6. Which operation are we going to use if we're dealing with divisible? This is the kind of stuff that we're going to look at to try to figure out, and I'm sure you're thinking division. You don't have to write this down. So let's make sure we get down these things, though. Divisible, a number is divisible by another number if the quotient is a whole number with no remainder. So divisible means you're dividing to get a quotient, and there's no remainder. There's an example here I want you to copy down, so put this down. 42 divided by 6 is 7. That's the quotient. So what that means is there's no remainder, so 42 is divisible by 6. Now, what that would mean then is out of the 6 teams, each team would have 7 girls. So since there are whole numbers, it is divisible by 42. Not only is 7 divisible by 42, but so is 6. 6 is also divisible. So when you do this, you can find 2 numbers. Copy down what I have check marked next to before moving on. Now when you divide, yes, you're going to have to put this whole table down in your notes. When you divide, you always want to kind of look for quick patterns to see if you can find out if a number can go into another number without having to do a ton of work. So what I did is I put together a table with the rules that work really fast to be able to do mental math and not have to overexert yourself. So I'm going to want you to copy down the rule, and then I have an example of how it works and one that wouldn't work. So the simple one for 2 is looking at the last digit. If it's an even number, it's going to work with 2. 2 will divide into it. So 3,978, that works. 4,975 would not because 5 is not an even number. That one's pretty easy. The other one that's pretty easy is the rule of 5. It says if the last digit is a 0 or a 5, it'll automatically be divisible by 5. So 14,975, you know that 5 at least goes into that, but it won't go into 10,978 because it ends with an 8. The other real easy one is the digits of 10. And basically, if you're looking to see if something's divisible by 10, you're just seeing if there's a 0 in the ones place value. And again, if you look at the divisible example, we have 15,990. We see a 0, so we know 10 will go into it. It won't, though, go into 10,536. Now, the other rules, they have specific things you're looking for that will help you answer them. So number 3, or for 3, you know it's divisible if the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. So sum means you got to add them. So you're going to do 3 plus 1 plus 5. That gets you 9. so that would mean that it does work. But 1 plus 3 plus 9 gives you 13. 3 does not go into 13. So you'd have to add up the digits and see if it gives you a number that 3 will go into. It's a pretty cool little trick. For 4, you're looking to see if the last 2 digits form a number that's divisible by 4. So you can see here with 12, will 4 go into 12? Most definitely it will. But 4 will not go into 18, so that doesn't work. So you just have to look at the last 2 digits. And 6 is actually easy if you found out that 2 and 3 work. So if a number can be divisible by 2 and divisible by 3, 6 is also a number that will go into it evenly. And finally, 9, you're going to do the same thing as the rule of 3, except you're going to see if 9 goes into it. So 7 plus 1 equals 9. That works. 9 plus 3, that gives you 12. 9 doesn't go into 12, so it doesn't work. So I want you, again, to copy these down so you have some examples, and we're going to test your skills with this rule throughout the rest of the lesson, and probably the rest of this unit and beyond, especially when you get into fractions. You're going to do a lot with the divisibility rules. All right, so here's an example I want you to copy down in your notebook because it's good to see how you can use these rules. So for example 1, it says tell whether 462 is divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're just looking at 4 specific numbers. Well, I have the table here that shows you the rules. So 2 says the last digit 2 is even. So with 2 being the last digit, that one is divisible. For 3, remember, if you add up the digits, 3 has to go into that number. So 4 plus 6 plus 2 gives you 12. 3 goes into 12, so that's also divisible. For 4, remember, you're just looking at the last 2 digits. Well, we have 62. 4 does not go into 62, so that is not divisible. I should have capitalized that D. And finally, 5, that's just looking to see if it ends in a 5 or a 0. It's a 2, so it's not divisible. So if we were to summarize the number 462 based on the rules, there you go. 462 is divisible by 2 and 3, but not by 4 and 5. I'd copy this down as an example because you can see in blue what I had to do using the rules to see if it's divisible or not. And I'll let you choose whether to write this one in your notes or not, but we're going to look at the number 540 and see if 6, 9, and 10 work for it. Well, remember, for 540, you have to see if 2 and 3 both work for it. So you have to think, well, is it end in an even number? Yes, 0 works. And 3 does go into 540 because if you add 5 and 4, you get 9. And 3 goes into 9. So 6 works. 9, if we add 5 and 4 and 0, I told you get 9. 9 goes into 9, so that works. And the last digit's a 0, so 10 has to be working there too. So really the rule is 540 can be divisible by 6, 9, and 10 because it meets the little trick. All right, I want you to figure this one out on your own. I'm even giving you some help here with the blue. Go ahead and figure out if 2, 3, 4, and 5, or maybe just 1, 2, or 3 of them actually work. And when you're done, come back and we'll see how you did. So when you looked at 114, the last digit was even. The ones place value is even, so that's divisible. If you add 4, 1, and 1, you get 6. 3 goes into 6. 4 doesn't work because 14 is the last 2 digits. 4 doesn't go into it. And it doesn't end in a 0, 5, so 5 doesn't work. So based on this problem, you just said you should have found 2 and 3 work, 4 and 5 don't. All right, here's one more I want you to try. Do your best to see if 6, 9, and 10 go into 810 or not. And you should have seen with this one, 6, 9, and 10 all work. Ends in a 0, so 10 works. 2 and 3 would work with 8 and 0 because it ends in a 0 and 8 plus 1 is 9. And of course 9 works for the same rule as 3. All right. 2 different vocab words I want you to be aware of that we're going to use a lot is the words of composite numbers and a prime number. So a composite number is any number greater than 1 that is divisible by at least two different numbers. Okay? So the number itself and 1 plus two other numbers would have to, or at least one other number, would have to work with that composite. A prime number is one that when you divide it, only the number itself and 1 are the only two numbers that will go into it. So the example I wrote here on the board is 11. The only factors you have of 11 is 1 and 11. So by knowing the factors of a number, you can tell if it's going to be composite or not. If it has more than itself and 1, it's composite. If it doesn't, it's prime. This is kind of a review for you, so just quickly put down the definitions and then we'll move on. Now, to help you, you could take a look at this table I made and maybe copy down the numbers between 1 and 50 that you know are prime. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37, 41, 43, and 47 are all numbers that can only be multiplied by itself and 1, or are divisible by itself and 1. So here's how you can try to figure out, let's look at these and try to figure out if they're composite or prime. Write these down in your notes. So 23, the only two numbers that can divide into 23 are 1 and 23. And since there's only two, we call that a prime number. And if you copied down the last slide, or at least the red numbers, you knew that already. Now 48, you can divide 48 by 1, obviously, and 48 by 48, obviously. But you can also have 2 go into 48, 3 goes into 48, 4 goes in, and so on and so on. Since you already know there's more than 1, you can right away say that is composite. Or at least not right away, but close. So again, write these down before moving on. Now, your turn. I'll give you two numbers. I want you to see if you can come up with whether the number is prime or composite. Come back when you got the answer. All right, hopefully you got 31 is prime and 18 is composite. A real easy hint to you is almost every number except 2 that is even is never going to be a prime number because you can always divide 2 into it if it ends in an even number. 31, only 1 and 31 go into it, so it is prime. Okay, hopefully you did well on those two. All right, let's test you on two more, 11 and 8. This probably won't take you long. Prime or composite, make sure you're writing it down in your notebook. So 11, that's a prime number, and composite is 8, or 8 is composite because it's an even. All right. Here's your box of thought today. 3 questions I want you to give some good thought to before moving on. And here is your quiz. You got a couple questions, 5 to be exact, that you need to work through. So 1, 2, and 3, you're going to tell me whether the rules of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, or 10 work with those. And then for 4 and 5, you're just going to tell me composite or prime. Good luck, good job, and you hung in there with all the notes today. I'm impressed. We'll see you for the next lesson, probably the next day we have class.